gentlemen, I'm George Moss again here at allpointstv.com and also WFOV 92.1, and we are very glad to have both audiences with us today at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We come together for the program every Monday from 2 o'clock to 3, and we hope you will stay around for the next hour. We're going to try to bring some things to you that no one else is doing, and try to say a few things that may not be mainstream, but we hope that will be what we try to do here, and that is to be accurate. You know, to be accurate, to be, what's that book out? To be popular or smart. We're not always very popular, but I think we will show that we have done the research pieces, and we are not here just wasting people's time, or at least we're trying to make sure we're not wasting people's time with what we're doing at the studio. I want to thank Paul Herring again over there at W92.1. Paul Herring is a visionary and recently did the Juneteenth here in the city of Flint, which is an annual event that he has on June 19th. And I want to give him another thanks for all the things he does in the community. Also, the Odyssey House, without which the program would not be possible over there. So they're doing a good job of financing programs on 92.1, and I want to thank them also. Okay, I wanted to do a couple of things in terms of going back to what we were talking about last week and try to tie in and maybe end some of the discussions we opened up last week but we didn't get a chance to finish. Mainly, I was talking, if you remember last week, I was talking about the interview that Mark Levine, one of the smartest men on television. I have a lot of respect for Mark Levine, and I've read many of his books, and each one has been a treasure of information. I do have a bone to pick with him, and also his guest that he had on the 23rd of last month, as they were talking about impeachment. And I want to try to clean some of the things up that were said there. I'm finding a lot of people that just don't understand the process, and Mark Levine doesn't understand it. And his guess was just as bad as he was. So I'm going to try to come behind some of the comments that you heard last week, and I'm going to read I have the manuscript now, so I have the actual transcript or what was said on the program, and I want to read parts of it, and then I want to stop and kind of make a correction of what's being said, because a lot of what was said here is not accurate. And these people, I don't know exactly what the bottleneck is. The Constitution is very clear and about impeachment. And if they had read Federalist Papers 65 and 66 that were done by Alexander Hamilton, I think they would have the background that allowed them to bring that information that's written in those two Federalist Papers and then bring that to what's written in the Constitution. Maybe it'd be clearer if they had done that. But they don't have the clarity that is necessary to understand what the particulars are and bring about the impeachment process. And I hope that I can help clean it up and clear it up today in this program. Last week I showed the tape, and I wanted to read some of the comments that were made in the tape. And it starts off with Levine saying, and he's introducing Michael McConnell. He's saying, you among others, well, you professor and director of the Constitutional Law Center at Stanford Law School, senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, you've argued 15 cases in front of the Supreme Court. And there's a number of topics that I want to touch on during the course of this hour, Mark Levine said. We're not going to get to everything I like to talk about, but we'll get to some of them. The first one is impeachment. We hear impeachment being discussed left and right in the country, in the media, by politicians. And then Mark Levine says, here's the impeachment clause in the Constitution, and here's what it says. The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, in the transcript, they write it the same way that Mark Levine stated it in the program. But the punctuation that they wrote it with, which is what the punctuation was and how it was presented by Mark Levine, is inappropriately applied. So I want to, first of all, point out what's wrong with the way Mark Levine said it and the way that they quoted him as having said it in the language. Because the punctuation, which Mark Levine stated the way it's written here, the punctuation shows the lack of clarity in the understanding of even the clause that he claims inappropriately is the impeachment clause. But here's the problem with the language, the way they quoted the language in what he professes to be the impeachment clause. That is not the impeachment clause, it's the removal clause. But I want to show you what's wrong with the way that Mark Levine even expressed it. He says, here's the impeachment clause in the Constitution, and here's what it says. The way Mark Levine quoted it as having stated is that he said, the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, you won't maybe pick that up. That's a misreading of it just in that, in terms of the punctuation. Because there is a comma in the language that's left out in the transcript because they're quoting it the way it was stated by Mark Levine. The way it should read is the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for, comma, and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, why is that important? Because what the language is doing is that it's showing the two processes involved in the impeachment process. You see, if you don't put a comma, and when it says conviction of, if you say it the way Mark Levine says it, the president, vice president, all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason. That's incorrect. You have to understand why the punctuation is there. And by him removing it from the way he recites it shows he does not understand even that aspect of it, although he's not quoting the impeachment process. That's one problem. The other problem is to understand what he is quoting and why it's important that you not read the way that he read it. Conviction, is not supposed to be read, the president, vice president, all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason. No. Shall be removed from office on impeachment for, there's a comma there, and conviction of, there's another comma there. And in the way Mark Levine read it, there are no commas there, and that's the way the transcript reads. The reason why there are commas there is because the framers wanted to intimate in their writing of the language that the process is twofold. In other words, it is not the impeachment process is not satisfied until you go through two processes. One is the impeachment, and the other one is the conviction. So that it reads this way in the clause that Mark Levine says is the impeachment clause is not the impeachment clause. This is the removal clause. But you have to write it the way it's stated in the Constitution. Impeachment for, one part of the process, and conviction of, the other part of the process. And to leave the commas out, what Mark Levine does is, because he's confused here about what he claims is the impeachment clause, he doesn't think the commas are important because he thinks that the impeachment clause requires conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. I'm hoping I'm making that clear, because that is a humongous mistake made by all the scholars that have been on television talking about the impeachment of basically trying to impeach the president. But at least let's understand the process, because the impeachment clause is not what's being stated here. This is the removal clause. This is the use of the impeachment process to bring about the removal of the president or the vice president or other civil officers of the United States. Now, notice it says here, civil officers of the United States, because those that are not civil officers of the United States, such as the senators and the members of the House of Representatives, they're not subject to the impeachment process. And that's why they are excluded from Congress if they so choose to expel a member of Congress through their own process, not the impeachment process, but through their own process, where each house in the Congress can, in fact, expel a member of his own body by a 2/3 concurrence of the vote in the House if it's a member of the House, or a 2/3 vote in the Senate if it is a member of the Senate. But it does not go through the impeachment process, because the senators and the members of the House are not civil officers of the United States. The civil officers apply to the president, vice president, and it says civil officers of the United States. There will be the judges, the federal judges. They're civil officers that are appointed by the president, and they are confirmed by the Senate. Now, how are you going to remove then those persons in the federal government that are in the Congress who are not civil officers and therefore not subjected to the impeachment process and removal through Article 2, Section 4, which is the removal clause of a civil office holder? How do you remove them, since they are not civil officers of the United States? They are the officers, listen carefully to this point, they are civil officers of the states from which they are elected. See, the president is elected as the only office holder that's elected on a nationwide basis. The entire electorate votes upon the president indirectly. You vote for the president by voting for the electors, and then the electors then take the majority vote of that state, and then they cast their ballot for that candidate. And we've had that process in place ever since the Constitution was ratified in 1788. And what's that song say? Don't go changing, because there's nothing wrong with the process if you understand what the framers had in mind. And we'll come back to that later on, because I want to talk about that also. But you do not impeach the members of the House, and you do not impeach the members of the Senate. Each of those two bodies will, in fact, expel their own members based upon a 2/3 vote in each chamber of the Congress of the United States, so that the Senate has the power to expel its members. It's not referred to the House, nor are these House members referred to the Senate. Each body, in Article 1, Section 5, Clause 2, each body has the power to censor its own members and to expel its own members in each of the two branches of the Congress by a 2/3 vote. In the House, they'll expel their member, if they so choose, by a 2/3 vote. And the member of the House, they'll expel their member by a 2/3 vote in the House if it's a House person that's being expelled. It's not referred to the other body, because they're two co-equal branches of the Congress of the United States. It's only the federal office holders, civil office holders of the United States on the federal level that can be removed from office upon the impeachment process. what Mark Levine and this other person that was interviewed in this case, Mike McConnell, does not understand is that if you are saying this is the impeachment process, how then can you use the language, all persons born, just a minute, the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of. You see, if there is no impeachment process in place prior to this language, then there's nothing then that shows how to bring about the removal through the impeachment process, because the process is not set up. So this cannot be the impeachment process. You see, the impeachment process is not found in Article 2, where this is found. This language here is found in Article 2, Section 4. The impeachment process is found in Article 1. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. Starts out there. Why in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5? Because the impeachment process starts out in the House, and the House is established in the Constitution through Article 1, Section 2 of that article. The House of Representatives shall choose its Speaker. I'm quoting Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. The House of Representatives shall choose its Speaker and shall have the sole power, S-O-L-E, the sole power of impeachment. That's the first part of the process. And then, if the House of Representatives, by a majority vote, if it were held today, and the president or vice president or civil officers, judges, and other appointees of the President of the United States, they all are subject to being impeached and removed through the impeachment process. If they are, in fact, removed, it starts off in the House of Representatives based upon Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. It takes a majority vote in the House for an office holder of the United States to be impeached. All that means is that the person that is impeached has been accused of some issue that's being raised by the House to which they feel it is egregious enough to bring about an indictment of the president or the vice president or a civil officer of the United States. But because of the check and balance system that you have in place here, then the matter is then referred, if it so is ordered by the House of Representatives, then the matter is referred to the Senate. And that's Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6, and that particular provision says that the trial shall be held in the Senate, and it takes a 2/3 vote in order to bring about the conviction. Now, I have not said one thing about removal, and that's that's why I am really stunned at people like Michael McConnell. And I notice how they really do a job of intimidating people when they say things like this. When Mark Levine introduced the professor, Dr. Michael McConnell, they'll do things like this in the introduction. They'll say, you among others, professor and director of the Constitutional Law Center at Stanford Law School, senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, you've argued 15 cases in front of the Supreme Court, and that's not shabby. So then when you hear that, you think then there's nothing to be said after they made their comments, because look at these credentials that they are importing. Or if the person comes from Harvard University, it's even worse, because what they'll do there is say, Harvard law professor, so-and-so and so-and-so. And you hear Harvard and you think, well, that has to be the Bible, because Harvard University, that's the top university you have in the United States. But let's look and see if, in fact, these persons are the scholars that they claim to be, because what they're saying here cannot be sustained based upon the document that they're quoting. These are constitutional scholars misquoting the Constitution. Mark Levine says, here's the impeachment clause in the Constitution, and here's what it says. The president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for a conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. I stated it the way it's written in the Constitution. Mark Levine reads it a different way. He says the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for a conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. So his assumption is then the language lends itself to the impeachment clause lends itself to removal. And that's not true. You can impeach an office holder and you can convict him of the impeachment charge in the Senate without removal, because the impeachment process is a political process. But it doesn't have to. But it does not remain a political process only if you intend to use the impeachment clause for the removal of an office holder. And I'll get into that in just a minute. Also, I want Mark Levine to listen to this also, because Mark Levine, very smart man, and brilliant in a lot of ways. That writes brilliant books. But on this point here, he is shockingly misinformed. And Mark Levine, I respect you, but I'm going to come behind you and correct you, because what you're saying is not true. And what Mike McConnell said is not true. Now here it is. Now this is Mark Levine. Now here it is said in the popular culture that pretty much means that it's a political decision, that if the House of Representatives has the votes, then there's pretty much good enough. Is that how it works? In other words, in the impeachment clause, that he says that the impeachment clause is Article 2, Section 4, not Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, and also Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6. He says the impeachment clause is Article 2, Section 4. That's a removal clause. He claims it's the impeachment clause. He asked McConnell if that's the way it works. McConnell answers, I don't think so, Mark. So the phrase high crimes and misdemeanors was specifically chosen to be a very high bar, and the reason for that is that our framers wanted the president to be independent of Congress. One of the main functions, I'm still reading McConnell's response, one of the main functions of the president was to be a check, one of the checks and balances against Congress, which they thought, perhaps inaccurately, was going to be by far the most powerful and most dangerous branch of the government. So they did not want Congress to be able to toss the president out on the basis of any low standard at all, and they deliberately chose the phrase high crimes and misdemeanors, which had a history in the common law because it referred to misdeeds of a public nature of a very serious sort amounting to abuse of power. Okay, I'm going to continue to read. I want to say something about what McConnell is talking about. And I just wanted to mention, you read the impeachment clause to us. Now here's McConnell, a constitutional scholar, saying that Mark Levine read the impeachment clause in the Constitution, which is found in Article 2, Section 4 of what Mark Levine read. And for McConnell to say this is the impeachment clause, rather than saying it is the removal clause, shows a stunning lack of understanding of the Constitution. Because you see, you're talking about the use of the impeachment clause that already exists before you get to Article 2. Article 2 deals with the president, the executive branch of government. It is in Article 1 where the impeachment process is located, because that is the prerogative of the Congress of the United States to, in fact, impeach a federal office holder, that's in the legislative branch of government. The process is laid out there. But now, if you're going to use the process and you're going to use it to bring about the removal, it stops being just a political process and becomes a legal process at this point. It's both political and legal. Because if you're going to use it to remove the president, there are specific constitutional requirements for the removal. There are no constitutional requirements for the impeachment. We got to take a break at this point. This is WFOV is going to take their break at this time, and we hope you'll come back in 4 minutes as I continue this rant. But we won't be very far away from where we were when you left. So when you come back in 4 minutes, we will see you on the other side of the break. If you use the impeachment clause, which is what is going on in Article 2, Section 4, that's why it already assumes that the impeachment clause is already in place and understood. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, you impeach in the House by a majority vote. Today that would be what? 218 members of the House, if they're all there. Then if you are going to bring about the conviction on the charge in the Senate, today it will take 2/3 of these senators, which would be 67 senators. But you can impeach without removing. Now, if you're going to use it to remove a civil office holder, then we get into a legal arrangement, because the Constitution sets out criteria for the removal so that it won't be on the happenstance on the politics of the members of the Congress who just want to get the president removed from office. They then raise the bar. It ceased being just a standard to bring about impeachment and conviction on the impeachment charge, which could be about censoring the president, trying to rein him in, things of that sort. But if you're going to remove the president, there are specific requirements for the removal. And that's treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. And you scholars out there, I wish you would understand that when you go to Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5. Because if you understood why they list treason in the removal of the president first, treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors, if you understood why they put treason there, then you can understand why they require a president to be a natural born citizen. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5, I'm quoting this from memory, right? Because they don't have it. I'm sorry, they don't get this. They're saying that the Constitution does not define what is a natural born citizen. It does define it. And because they don't understand it's defined in the Constitution, nor the Supreme Court understand it, that's why John McCain was running in 2008, and John McCain was not eligible to run for President of the United States. Don't give me this stuff about he was born over there in the Panama Canal, blah, blah, blah. Natural born means that you must be born inside of the United States. There are 50 of them now. There were 13 then. If you're born outside of the United States, I don't care who your parents are, you can have a mother and you can have a father who are both citizens of the United States. Okay, we want to welcome back WFOV. And we're glad you came back, because I want to make this point after your arrival. I have not said the main point I want to make here about this process. What I'm talking about now, though, is treason is found in Article 2, Section 4. The president can be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. So now, to the impeachment process, if it's being used for the removal of the president, then you have to then meet a constitutional requirement. So now the political process is being loaned to the legal process. It must meet this constitutional standard: treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. And so if you take that understanding of that found in Article 2, Section 4, and then take it to the requirement of a person that's being the President of the United States, who is a single office holder of the executive branch of government, then you understand then why they want that person, that single office holder, the only office holder that is elected in the executive branch, why they wanted that person to be a natural-born citizen so as to remove any possibility of there being dual loyalties. Must be a natural-born citizen of the United States. That means then the person must be born in the United States. Don't come telling me about some territory where you have the flag hanging over it. If it's not the United States, 50 of them, 13 at that time, then the person is not a natural-born citizen, regardless of the condition of his mother. Because we're not talking about the loyalty of the parents. I have some other evidence I can give you on that, but I understand the Constitution and they don't. All these D's behind their names and so on and so forth, that might, when you introduce a person saying he's a professor and director of the Constitutional Law Center at Stanford Law School and so on, or you talk about Alan Dershowitz being the professor emeritus at Harvard University, or Lawrence Tribe, who is still there spreading his nonsense, and he's still the professor of law there, I don't think you ought to be intimidated by that. The question is, do they know what they're talking about? Degrees or not degrees? And when you introduce these persons and say Harvard professor, everyone at that point import expertise that they may or may not have. The degrees don't always indicate whether you have expertise or not. It's just that you went to class. Maybe you didn't go to class. Because in those large classrooms, you don't know who's sitting out there. You may have a assigned seat, maybe somebody else sitting there. And many times, that is the case, particularly if you have money. Or I'll say this, I've been to those schools. Or if you're in a fraternity or sorority, I can almost guarantee a lot of those degrees are in fact earned by other persons, because that's why the frats exist. The brethren, these groups at Yale and these other groups that you have, where they have members of their group, helping each other, because that's how a lot of them go through there. I remember, I won't be on this long, but I want to make the side point. People used to ask me sometimes when I was in the public school, they would say, why aren't you dumb like the rest of them? Meaning, teachers. Not that I'm saying they're dumb, but there are people that will tell me that. And the answer to that question, quote unquote, not that I'm saying that about them, but the reason, the answer to that question is because I went to class and some of them didn't. And I went to the library, continuing what I had done when I was in high school. So I understand why some of these persons are saying these things that they're saying, because a degree does not necessarily imply that there's a knowledge base in back of the degree. And when what they're saying about impeachment, I can tell you right now, what they're saying about impeachment is not true. I have not heard any scholar on television stating it correctly. Not Judge Napolitano, who is always on TV and always misstating the fact. Judge Napolitano on impeachment said, and I'm quoting this from this article that came out April 25th, Congress can impeach anybody for the reasons set forth in the Constitution. You know, you cannot be a scholar and say that, because there's nothing set out in the Constitution, Napolitano, for impeachment. What's set out in the Constitution is the use of the impeachment process. If you use it in Article 2, Section 4, and you're trying to remove the president, then that's the specific language there that governs the removal of the president using the impeachment process. Treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, I want to read something else that McConnell said, because I want to show that the rest of the stuff he was talking about is not true either. See, they're saying that because they confuse the impeachment clause with the removal clause, they're saying that it is not subject to review by the court. Look, the impeachment process is not subject to review from the court, by the court. The impeachment process in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5 is not reviewable by the court, because that's given to the House of Representatives by the Constitution, not reviewable. The conviction clause in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6, not reviewable by the court. But you see, you can review the removal of the president. And nobody has said this because none of these people understand it. If you in fact accuse the president of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors, and use this junk in the Mueller report, which was written for the Congress. This report was not written for Barr, to the Attorney General. This report, 400 pages long, 448 pages long, was written for the House of Representatives. He was writing an impeachment document. This man was saying, go back and read the document for yourself. This man's a criminal. This man was saying that he was unable to, with the evidence, was not sufficient to exonerate the president of the charge. Do you understand how that inverts the process in this country, the constitutional process in this country? You're not supposed to look at the evidence to see if you can exonerate a president of a charge. You assume the person is innocent until proven guilty. Here is this man inverting the process and saying they could not find sufficient evidence to exonerate the president. What about bringing the president and you accuse the president of I'm getting too excited here. You accuse the president of colluding. You've accused the president of treason. And you're saying that you could not find sufficient evidence to show that he was not guilty of treason. That's not the process. The process is you did not find evidence to show that he was guilty of that. There was no evidence of it. Here's the way it's stated by the Judicial Watch. This is Mueller should. We have got to investigate Mueller, because if these people that ran this farce on the American people do not go to jail for what they did to this country, somebody has to go to jail. Starting with all those heads of the deep state. If I have enough time, I'm going to say a a few things about the court they went to, which nobody's talking about. I have documents here that I want to read you about this FISA court that was set up in 1978. And if this country wants to be whole, what they're saying that we want this country to be whole because of the original sin of the country, and they want to make slavery the original sin of the country. Slavery not the original sin of the country. The original sin of the country is the subverting of the Constitution of the United States by the very first administration and certainly the second administration of this country. You see, the framers were great in writing a document at the outset of the country to, in fact, limit the power of government. That's a great thing, and they did tremendous work there, starting on June 25th, 1787, and ending short of 3 months by 8 days, by it ending September 17th, 1787. I'm exactly right in what I'm stating here. They were in that room secretly going beyond their mandate, and they were throwing out the document they went there to reform, but they found they could not reform. It was too flawed. And they threw it out and brought another document in its place. That's why they were in that room in secret. And when that one lady asked them, "What are y'all doing in that room?" They said, Benjamin Franklin, the elder statesman in that room, said, "We are creating a republic if you can keep it." And that's what they created, a republic. They did a brilliant job of that. None have been better at it. That's why all of them are copying what you have here. But try to tell it to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a person involved in treason on the court, as most of those judges are involved in treason. You don't like to hear that.
How did you like the fact that the guy that Kavanaugh just got, confirmed, she actually is singing praises about him? That makes me question if he was that good of a choice. She's singing the praises.
No, Kavanaugh is a surrogate of John Roberts. People think we have a conservative court. We don't have a conservative court. We have 4 liberals, 3 conservatives, and 2 John Roberts. Brett Kavanaugh is a John Roberts surrogate. So this idea that you have a conservative court is not as bad as it was before you arrived there, but Kavanaugh is not a conservative. And he showed that in some of the rulings he's already made, as he got one eye on Roe v. Wade, and how he is trying to make sure they don't think he's on there they're going to say it's settled law. It's settled law. How is it? Okay, I don't want to get off on that. But no, Kavanaugh is not a conservative. We got 4 liberals, 3 conservatives, the most conservative of whom is this brilliant judge, Clarence Thomas, who is a constitutionalist, an originalist. And people don't like him because he does not bend the law based upon preference. That is, say, Clarence Thomas is what Brett Kavanaugh was talking about. He was talking about, I think that Gorsuch was also saying this, but Gorsuch really meant it. He was saying that I have written many opinions that I personally disagree with. In other words, he has a personal opinion, but the law is, the rule of the country is a law in the Constitution. And you may disagree with it, but the law is what's written down in our foundational document. And that's what they have to rule upon. And very few of them are doing that. If they were doing that, you never would have gotten Roe v. Wade, by the way, because Roe v. Wade contravenes the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator, not endowed by the state, not endowed by the federal government. You don't get rights from these people. Endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, meaning rights you're born with, among which are life, liberty, and it used to say property, and they took that out and put pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, to secure the rights, not to give you the rights, to secure the rights, since they are inalienable, rights you're born with. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any government begins to be a threat to those rights, this is Jefferson talking here on the other side of that says it is the right, it is your duty to alter that government or abolish it. Roe v. Wade cannot be the law of the land, and it cannot be the final law if we respect our documents. Cannot be. And that's why these judges are frauds on that court. And I want you to look at their fraudulent behavior. And if I have enough time, I want to talk about the FISA court, because I have the document right here. A secret court in the United States. These people are gangsters. And I'm calling them on it because that's what they are. And I'm not going to pretty it up. I'm not going to finesse it and try to make a silk purse out of a soul's ear. You cannot do magic with what's going on. You cannot change reality by denying it. We have gangsters running this government. And that's why they are confusing the American people about the impeachment process. Because what they're hiding is they do not believe you have the right to go against their verdict. They didn't want an outsider in there. And you put an outsider who has no political bills to pay to the insiders. And you installed him in the government at the top of it without any experience in government before, and they want him out of there because he's not a member of the club. He's not paid his dues to them. And that's why they'll say things like Justin Amash, who I now understand he's getting ready to run as getting ready to run as a independent in the election next year. He's going to be turned out. If he had run as a Republican, he had no shot. What he's hoping for right now then is that there will be enough votes that will be split and he can get back in through the back door. So he declared himself as independent. Because I can tell you right now, he had no shot of getting the Republican Party nominee in that district that he's in over there in the 3rd District in Michigan. He's going out of there. And they already primarying him. There are 2 persons opposing him. So he then votes the party, and he gets over there, he gets out there now running as independent. And if he loses that, he's going to run, here's my prediction, he's going to run as an independent for president. And why is he going to do that? Because he is part of the resistance. See, some of the resistance left out. That's why the Democrats had a direct link, a line right directly toward the White House. Because 39 members of the Republican Party stood down from running for another term. 26 of them, if you want to know the truth of it, 26 of the 39 did not seek another office. Now, how is it that these members, like Paul Ryan, who've been running forever for the Congress of the United States, all of a sudden did not want to continue in power anymore? Why was that? Because the resistance could not be given in the front, being a part of the president's own party, and not expose what's going on in Washington. And if you doubt this, go and read the book by Russ Baker called Family of Secrets. Because that's where you get a very good reading of what's happening right now. They're trying to remove this president. And that's why you hear these gangsters saying things like Mueller. I did not find sufficient evidence to exonerate the president. Is that our constitutional standard? If you cannot find sufficient evidence to exonerate, aren't you supposed to be finding out if the charge can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. And then they try to make it look like the reason why the president was not indicted was because you cannot indict a sitting president. Look at that. No finding of collusion in the report. And then Mueller makes it seem before the American people that the reason why the president is not indicted is because you cannot indict a sitting president. What about the evidence? There was no evidence that was any collusion on the part of this president. There's no treason here on the president's part. The treason is on the other side. That if they were concerned about treason, look at the Uranium One deal. Treason there. Look at the fact that they were money laundering through the Clinton Foundation. The Russians weren't hacking the DNC. I'll tell you who was hacking the DNC. Seth Rich, who was inside of the DNC and saw the corruption was there. And he, in fact, came out as a whistleblower underneath the surface, and they found out who that person was inside of the DNC that was giving that information out, and you know what happened to him? Because these people are gangsters, and they are very dangerous. I'm telling you the absolute truth. If I did not have the evidence, I wouldn't say it, because I don't speak from any place other than what the documents say. But if I have the documents, I'm bold enough to say it, and I have the documents. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. Go behind me and do your own investigative work. Read these persons that are trying to hold the government to account. Tom Fitton is one such person. And his judicial watch. This man is a patriot. And that's something very rare in this country today, where you have people that are patriots trying to hold on to what the framers created and trying to hold on to it, because, folks, I have to tell you something. We are losing. We are losing. They are taking this country away from us. And they're doing it because they don't intend to have the power restrained. And you just seem to be sitting here watching it as if it's a spectator sport. They are taking more and more of the liberties, and they're trying to tell 63 million people that they had no right to their verdict on November the 8th, 2016. That's how bold they are. But they can't come out and say it directly that they want to tear your vote up or they want to disenfranchise you. How would they be able to do that in front of the public? You have a major revolt. So then the Russians caused it to occur. They don't believe that and never have believed it. If they believe that, they'd be spending all their time trying to make sure that the Russians don't interfere. But is that what they're doing? No, they're trying to enlarge their voting base. Prisoners, felons who weren't able to vote in prior elections, they want them to vote now. The Electoral College, where they lost it because they didn't carry enough of the electoral votes. It takes 270 electoral votes. They're now trying to get rid of the Electoral College because they know that's an impediment. And they don't understand why the framers put the Electoral College in place, but the design is brilliant if you understand it. And I'm going to go into that, not next week, week after next. I want to go into that because I want to explain why we do not have a democracy in this country. Because we don't want tyranny in this country. And if you have a majority running anything, let's say 51% majority and a 49% minority, I can tell you right now, the minority vote, the minority voice will be suppressed because it's about the numbers. So they were fearful of that, and they prevented that with what they set up as a way of checking on the majority. If you want to read about that, go read about Farrell's Paper 10, Farrell's Paper number 10, which deals, among other things, with factions. And they brilliantly found a way to get around factions without oppressing factions. But you have to hold factions down. But you don't want to be brutal in the holding them down. So what they did there was make sure that you, in fact, could fight the danger of factions by creating other factions and creating multiple factions. There are 50 factions that determine the President of the United States. 50 majority factions choose the President of this country. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The framers were brilliant theoreticians. I didn't say brilliant politicians. There are no brilliant politicians. Let's get that straight.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy thing. Lie, get elected, do what you want to do, bury what you really do to the public, against the public, and then get reelected by go shaking their hand at election time.
That's what they do, John. They make it appear that there's some great gift that you have to be a politician. They'll say, for example, that politics is the art of compromise. Look, politics is the art of deception. And you're seeing it with this woman from California who shouldn't get anywhere close to the presidency. Kamala Harris, who is playing the race card because it worked once before with 44. She's trying it with, and she's trying it now with the idea that she's a standard bearer watching out for racism and riding the race card, playing the race card. Look, all of them are the same there in both parties. And the American people, you got to open up your eyes and watch what's going on. Take responsibility for your country. We can pass this country down to your children as intended by the framers. They do not intend to do that. They plan to take over from the citizens of this country and rule this country in a socialist state, and they have to be stopped. Okay, I'm going to finish this up next week, and we'll go into some other areas as well. But I'm right about what I'm saying here, and that means then, since they're saying the opposite, they cannot be right. Until next week, I want you to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.